I'm really excited to be here today and happy to chat all things fundraising, building a product with no funding, getting your first investors on board. And also, I love to help fellow founders as well, whether you're an aspiring founder or you're fundraising right now. I'll share my details so you can really reach out to me afterwards and we can have a chat as well. If we can make some introductions, I would love to.
Amazing. Thank you, Am. Thank you. This is going to be pure comedy by the end, passing this back and forward. But this is for the purpose of YouTube, and obviously you can all hear us just speaking. So we'll see what happens. You've spoken briefly there about growing up in Singapore, moving to the UK. It'd be, I think, useful to get a little bit of context about what that was like. Obviously, you've talked about growing up in Singapore, but the shift kind of culturally. I think when we were speaking beforehand, you came and you were studying in London. During your time at university, you founded your first business, and you've gone on to have go through an incubator program since before getting to Voda. So I think it might help just to shape the scene in terms of just very briefly those couple of early stages, and then we'll dive into Voda from there, if that's okay.
Perfect. Yeah, so a little bit of my origin story. So I moved to the UK at 21 for my first year in university. So in Singapore, so basically I was in the army for 2 years. You have to serve in the military for 2 years. And I wasn't out then as well. So we started a bit late, and then I came to London to study at the London School of Economics at the LSE for my undergrad, and it was the first time I could really be myself without having to look over my shoulder, because really Singapore is so small that if you're out at the gay club, you might meet someone that your family knows. So it was the first time I could live as myself, and I had a great time in university. It was amazing to be in London for the first time, and there were a lot of opportunities. So I started my first business in uni. I won a university startup competition, and they gave me a few £1,000 to start my first business. And my first business was actually a social business. It was a business that worked with artisans in developing regions and to bring them online. So the idea was an Etsy for developing countries. But we quickly pivoted because we quickly realized that if you were to sell a product from, say, Afghanistan, the shipping would be like £150 and the product would be £50. There's no way you could really make that work. So we became more of a curated artisan brand. And I was actually wearing something I designed with artisans. It's made in Afghanistan itself. But that business never raised funding. But I learned a lot from it in terms of what it means to build a consumer brand. And also, I think, starting to build my network there. So I did that in university whilst I was studying. And shortly after graduating from university, I applied to Antler. So Antler is an early stage venture program. So if you're not sure what Antler is, it's an accelerator that has programs all around the world. And if you're looking to start a business, I highly recommend it. So Antler selects 80 to 100 founders and who wants to start a business, but you might not have a co-founder. So you go through like a 3-month residency, and back in the day, I think you got £2,500 a month to live. So you literally put together to you get money to live, and you meet 80 other founders, and you just kind of think of ideas of what you want to build. And that was then the first time I built my first venture-backed business. So I partnered up with someone who was leading Uber in India, and I was the young and scrappy one in the cohort because I didn't really have startup experience, but I was really eager to prove myself because I could build lots of different things like web apps and websites, no code. And so we did that, and we raised some funding through the program. And the reason I really encourage programs like that is actually that program did a lot of wonders for my network now, because when you have 80 founders and you meet them through this cohort and you become friends for a few months, many years later, some people are no longer in running a company, but some people are. You then have 80 people you could reach out to for potential introductions. Obviously, most people would say no, not because they don't want to, but because maybe someone raised money, but then they're not super close to investors anymore, so there's no point making an introduction for you. Or they have their own things to worry about. But what that was really helpful for me was it really helped set me up for success for Voda, which is what I'm building now. And I've done now a few accelerator programs, and even if you don't get formal investment from the program, I think it's very helpful to go through it because it really expands your network very quickly.
Perfect. This is good. This is good. We're building. We're building. It always helps, I think, to have that origin piece, and to. I feel like with the pattern we've noticed so far with the founders that we've spoken with up here, that there's been a journey that they've been on to get to where they are now and what they're building now, and I think that leads nicely into Voda. And you gave us a bit of an introduction there at the start, but the thing I'm keen to kind of talk about a bit now is your why. In terms of doing that, coming up with that first idea, and you spoke to it very briefly in your introduction, but I think in terms of that, it was linked to your personal journey, and you've seen a problem that could be solved, or an area where you could add value, definitely like a social element to it. So is it possible you could share a little bit more about that why for you, and what gave you that first spark to start building in this space?
Yeah, so my idea for starting Voda after I was going through therapy. So even though things were going quite well at work with my second company, I was having a lot of issues with burnout, and also just always had a dysfunctional relationship with work, or dysfunctional relationship with myself, and also slightly with alcohol back in the day. And I think a lot of that after therapy I realized was true because of my own experiences growing up gay, and a lot of my issues around internalized shame and how I would, depend a lot on external validation to feel good about myself, be it through achievements. I think a lot of people could resonate with that. So that led me to going to therapy. And my first therapist wasn't part of the LGBT community, and I think there were just a lot of things that they didn't really understand about me. But when I got matched with a therapist who was LGBT themselves, I think a lot of things really opened up for me in terms of personal insights. And I think it helped me really understand my own emotional history growing up. And after going through therapy, I couldn't afford therapy forever. It's not cheap. I started using a lot of these mental health apps. But I quickly realized a lot of these mental health apps didn't really speak to me, because if you use like a Calm or Headspace, they often, if you were to look on an issue, it wouldn't be, they would reference examples that I just wouldn't really resonate with. And there will also be a lot of I think, topics that I think would not sit on those apps because they don't really resonate with the main community. So for example, on Voda, we have a big series on, say, on love and relationships, but we have modules that help you with dating apps and mental health. And we have different modules for different communities, because for gay men, using Grindr, which is a hookup app, is actually could be really tough on your self-esteem, because you could send someone a photo and they reply, "Ew." And and there's also the added layers of like navigating open relationships, exploring polyamory, which we support a lot of people with. That being said, those structures are not necessarily queer, and a lot of people who identify as straight do explore new relationship structures, but a lot of these, I think, mainstream apps wouldn't go as far as we do. So we're really about breaking norms. So that's when I had the idea to do something like Voda, because I saw a really big gap. And I also knew that it was an underserved market, because a lot of people think the community is just like 2% of the world. But if you look at US stats, up to 20% of Gen Z identify as LGBT. And I just think there's a big thing I had with investors when I was pitching my business, is that it's a much bigger market than a lot of people think. A lot of businesses don't get funded because people think that, and I think in this space don't get funded because they think it's like a 1-2% population size, but it's actually much larger. And I think the number is repressed in a lot of places because of a few things. Because one, oftentimes people don't really want to disclose it, even in the UK, because if you do a census, it's shared with the household. So if I'm out to my family, why would I out myself to the census if you're to submit together? And secondly, I think I'm a left-hander as well. So back in the day when being left-handed was demonized, like left-handedness was like less than 1% globally. And once the stigma around being left-handed went away, I think it plateaued to like maybe 7% or 8%. I can't remember the exact figures. And that's, I think, for me, I think a lot of people are naturally LGBT, and there are probably a lot more bisexual people than we realize, but who lead mostly heteronormative lives because they're quite afraid to explore that, and because they're in an environment that really stigmatizes it if they were to explore who they are. So that's a bit long-winded, but that's how I got the idea for Voda and really kind of went all in into it.
Amazing, amazing. And thank you for sharing so candidly, and it makes it so real now what you're building in this particular space, which is fantastic. I guess I've got two follow-ups in terms of what you were talking about there. I think, as with every potential founder, there is likely to have been a point where you've spotted a gap, you've seen a problem, you've felt it yourself, the mainstream apps aren't covering what you want, you've identified something, and I would love to hear more about that point for you where it really crystallized and you went, okay, like, I'm doing this, I'm jumping in, I'm starting to build something. And I always find that really fascinating when someone gets to that point of, okay, I'm gonna start building. And then I guess just following on from that, you've got to that point. It would be really useful, I think, for everyone here to understand, like, as well as you having that feeling, did you feel the need to kind of test and validate it and get some feedback as to whether this is legitimately something you're onto?
Yeah, so I think when you're building, so I did a lot of validation before we brought the thing live, but I didn't do that much validation before just building something, because nowadays you could build something in a weekend, and because I had this, I could learn how to build websites no code and come up with the concept. I got really excited and started right away, and I think so there are a few hypotheses to test. So I think by then what has been de-risked in the market is, can you deliver mental health support through an app? So I didn't really need to test that because there's like big players like Calm and Headspace, which does meditations, but there was also the era of digital cognitive behavioral therapy apps, CBT apps, where there were all kinds of different self-led, self-therapy apps out there. So I wasn't too worried about whether something like that would work because it's already been de-risked. So for me, it was just building the landing page and building the product, no code, really quickly in a few weeks. And I put together some savings and convinced some therapists to work with me for really discounted rates. And we worked on our first programs together. And so we tested that with a pilot group, and that went pretty well. I would recommend building something before. If you have an inkling, given the cost of making things today, especially now with tools like Lovable and with AI, you can actually validate so much already. I think customer calls are really important, like open-ended ones where you don't show them anything. You just talk to them. If you're serving, like, say, LGBT people in mental health, or if you are serving, I don't know, if you're doing specifically just men's mental health, maybe just talk to them and see what issues, cisgender men have or straight men have. But right now, I think with Voda, I realize that oftentimes if you really have something in mind, it's easier to just show people because sometimes what people say they want, or sometimes people don't know what they want. So if you can present something to them, it's much easier to, actually, like, you'd be surprised when we develop something new, when we actually build it very quickly, there may be some things where, actually, I do like that. Instead of spending too much time in the ideation and discovery phase. I think sometimes people get stuck too long, spending weeks talking to customers. I want to build mental health for LGBT people, and then you just spend 20 weeks. I think right now, just get started. We do even now, fortnightly sprints. So every 2 weeks, we release something new, and we test it with users. We still speak to customers every day, and people can send in feedback to us directly through the app, and it goes straight to our Slack, which is a messaging software. So yeah, I feel like I just rambled on. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yeah.
It's perfect. It's
cool.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think in terms of that then, again, I think it's going to be helpful for the audience here, the audience at home, building that first product. So the like key takeaway I've taken from that there is like just start first and foremost, get building, get something out there, get people using it, and then start taking that feedback. In terms of that, I think that the thing that would be useful to know is what did that first product look like? You talked about partnering, with a therapist. Did you build like one course and a basic app? Was it an app or was it a website? Like, how did you prioritize what to put into the product, and what did that first version look like?
Yeah, so the first version really was inspired by a lot of the digital CBT apps that were out there already, where you could learn cognitive behavior therapy techniques. We're very different from that now, but that was, I think, the first thing we wanted to test. So I then scope out 8 topics that those apps usually don't cover. So dating apps and mental health for LGBT people, overcoming internalized stigma, so internalized shame, deciding whether to come out. So a lot of these topics that mainstream apps didn't address. I then worked with some therapists to write the content with me. We came up with our own structure that was very much inspired by a lot of these, programs. You start with introducing the topic. You introduce a therapy approach. We then teach them one technique that therapists recommend, and then we got the whole script written. I wrote the script back in the day. And then it gets reviewed by a therapist again. So at the front end, we had therapists scoping it out and therapists reviewing it. But I led most of the writing. We quickly realized that therapists are very good with the techniques, but they don't really know how to deliver something in a way, like an audio program. And then I paid some LGBT voice artists to narrate it, and then I cut everything up myself in GarageBand. So that was the content. And then back in the day, I found this no-code tool called Bravo Studio that turns your Figma designs into an app. So Figma, if you don't know what it is a bit like a Photoshop or a Canva for designing apps. And I didn't have much experience, but actually it wasn't that difficult. And you could also then download app templates and app components online. So I found lots of components, made it my own, shifted things around, and then in 2 weeks I had an app. And how Bravo Studio work is you have the designs, and then you click this layer, there's a button, then you add the words that says submit, and then this submits, if this makes sense. If you can turn this component into a play button, so then it plays music. So it's a bit like coding by assigning tags to different parts of the design. And so this back button leads to this page, and this button leads to that page. So you kind of just stitch everything together without any bit of code, and I got that app to work, and that's how we got to our first few thousand users. It was slightly clunky, but it worked really well because it looked visually quite good, even though it was loading quite small. But today, what I'll recommend is like Lovable or whatever. What they call vibe coding nowadays is you can just have a prompt like, help me design an app like this, and then it just generates it for you. Even if you can't code, you can do a landing page or a website quite easily today. There's so many different ways to do it. Or if you want to have app designs that look really lovely, you can just get a subscription and get really beautiful app components for your pitch deck, so you can draw mock-ups of what your app would look like. But I think today the cost of entry is really low. And what differentiates like business founders in the early stage, I think, is like taste. If you can come up with something that looks kind of nice, if you're in a consumer space like me, something that looks quite elegant, you adapt it based on your what is out there. I think that really appeals to investors. And what investors say to us very early on is, I like the way you have kind of structured this brand, even though technically it was quite weak. But when it came to a B2C business like ours, that was what a lot of investors liked about us. In the B2B space, I think things are a bit different when you're selling business software. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, man. Makes a lot of sense. And I would love to just call it out. The branding today, the app is beautiful. Really, really good. So yeah, definitely check it out, everybody. I'm going off script. It happens. The people that have been before, we're going off script for 1 second, man. 1 second. I find the space that we're in at the moment just amazing. You've called out a couple of tools there. You've called out vibe coding. You've called out like the barrier to entry nowadays, and we talked about it super briefly just as we were waiting here. It feels like starting businesses now, building technology businesses now, as you say, the barrier is lower. Have you got a feeling on how you think that might go over the next few years? Do you think we're going to get more innovators, more people entering the startup space, or what's your feeling on where we might end up as a startup community?
Absolutely. I think it really depends on the kind of business you want to build. I think in the midterm, we'll probably get a lot of people who can sustain themselves with a business that where even if you don't want to raise venture capital or raise angel funding, you can probably build something that sustains you. I'm not sure what's that kind of business called, where not digital nomads, but you make £5,000-6,000 a month, and you run a one person business, and you have all these different tools to help you do different things. I definitely can see what a lot of big investors say, where there could be like a 10-person startup that could reach like $1 billion valuation. We're totally so close to that. Our team works extremely quickly now. My co-founder Chris, he's a PhD in AI, he's a full stack engineer, and he didn't have any experience in building on Flutter, which is our new app code base, but he rebuilt an entire app in 2 months because our app was getting too slow. When our no-code app got to 10,000 users, it was too slow. But it came in the right time where all these AI co-pilots with coding was so fast that he rebuilt it in 3 months. We hired him a part-time senior engineer to just decode things, but now he does everything himself, and we even now have a new build every week. So I think you have a technical person on the team, it really amps out how fast you can deliver something. And then I think for us in the consumer space, at least, I think a lot of the final touches are super important, like where the button is placed, how the button reacts, how the interactions are, and then that comes down to being meticulous again and going through all the small tedious things. But that process is so amped up. So I think definitely, I think anyone now here can build something, and because even for press, I use AI to help me in my press releases, and we announced a round a few weeks ago, and we got 10 different mentions from Broadsheet. So there's so many ways you could learn to do things yourself now for a lot less money.
Perfect, thank you. I went off script, but I had to ask. I guess bringing it back to Voda, you've worked with the therapist, you've identified your initial content, you've built an app, you've used Bravo Studio, you've got it out there, and then you very quickly kind of went, we had 2,000 users. If you're in the audience, you're watching at home, have you got any tips in terms, how did you get those first couple of thousand users, and what did you learn from them in those super early days?
So we got first users mainly through social media and partnerships. So when we first started, we got invited to a psychotherapy. I was speaking out to a lot of people from the space, and we got invited to a Pink Therapy conference, which is an annual conference for LGBTQ psychotherapists. And we presented what we were doing. This is a beta, we're starting out, we'd love for you all to try it out. And we gave them all free codes to try it out. And we then started getting referrals because a lot of the therapists, in between sessions, people will ask them, what should I use in between a session? Usually they'll just say use Headspace or Calm, but now they could say, you could try this new thing called Voda, and that's how we got quite a lot of our users, and we still do today. A lot of therapists really like us as mental health support in between sessions. So we're not for people with a pathology, so meaning if you have severe depression or severe anxiety, we wouldn't recommend to use our app independently. But I think it's very helpful, Voda, for you to use in between sessions or on top of existing sessions, because it provides, I think, that culturally competent layer that maybe your therapist is not able to provide you with. If a therapist gives you really good techniques to do on, say, cognitive behavior therapy for management of anxiety, but Voda can help you with, say, uncovering your layers of shame that could not be measured by clinical indicators of anxiety and depression. So that's one way we got users, which is by speaking with therapists. just putting ourselves out there and presenting at the conference. Secondly, is that we did a lot of social media. So I wrote a lot of social media content that was before, and we also did quite a bit of TikTok, where I'll do really stupid TikToks where like there's music and you're pointing and things, and yeah, that brought some users as well. That's mainly how it grew, and now mostly we've managed to get the attention of the App Store, so we get quite a lot of traffic through App Store, different App Store features, and we also run some paid ads here and there to test it out. But paid ads are a lot harder for us to grow because of data restrictions, especially to do with the LGBT community. So there was I think very rightfully a person that sued, I forgot which tech company, for targeting him because he is gay. And so now there's a lot of restrictions, I think, with these paid media companies where you're not really allowed to target somebody based on their sexuality or gender. Then, of course, then there's the impact of how something like Voda can grow, because then it's very hard for us to target someone because we need to try other ways. And so then our ads, we don't really want that much because we keep getting homophobes being like, why am I getting this? I don't want to see this. But I'm like, we don't want you to see this as well. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how we got our first users. Very happy to chat ways to get users and ways to get press. And I think, and then after that, we started getting more press. And we've got features in Metro, the Daily Mirror, and some other publications because of our founding story. So because of my lived experience and my story of building the app, we were able to pitch myself to these different publications and get press that way. And so I think that's one of the benefits of building something that you are personally invested in, because then journalists could find a more interesting angle there. Yeah.
Amazing. Perfect. I guess just sort of quickly building on that, you've identified early on people that can refer you to the right people. So you've called out going to conferences, you've called out speaking at conferences, charities and stuff like that. It may be useful for people to understand a little bit perhaps how you did that. How did you go about approaching, charities? Were there any sort of techniques that kind of worked well for you to get these referral partners?
Yeah, it was definitely a slow build. Like in the beginning, it's always the hardest. Now, I think most of the LGBT charities here in the UK know of us, and some of them have reached out to buy from us for their team. I think it really just starts with trying to find what those events are and just meeting people face to face. I'm very lucky to be in a space where a lot of people in my space really enjoy their work. So to them, going to these events or meeting up with them or getting a phone call with a lot of them doesn't really feel like work for either of us. And I was very personally interested in lots of issues in like social justice or human rights. So when it comes to like, I was in Budapest this weekend for Budapest Pride. The government, for example, officially banned Pride there. And so more than 200,000 people showed up this year, which was more than 5 times the turnout last year. So which is a really funny effect, like a Streisand effect. And because everyone started coming in and lots of European politicians came in as well and really tried to have a buffer zone where they just put politicians like everywhere in the middle of the march. So, the police has a duty to protect people in the march because there was threats of far-right people showing up. But I would say go to the spaces and meet people there and be genuinely curious about who they are. So yeah, that's how I've really found it helpful in working with LGBTQ therapists and also LGBTQ charities. And now we've collaborated with quite a few charities on different events. And in the beginning we gave them all free codes as well. So now we don't give free codes to charities as well, but in the beginning when we were starting out and it wasn't that good enough to be paid for, we gave a lot of them free codes. But in a sense, that was like free user testing for us as well, I suppose. But now we don't provide free memberships to charities anymore. We offer a massive discount, like 75% off for charities. But we do need to cover our base costs. Yeah.
Makes lots of sense. And I guess for you at that point, very early, the user feedback is super valuable for you. So it makes sense, I guess, for you to get that and support the charities at the same time.
Yeah.
The other thing that I absolutely loved when we were chatting beforehand is, am I right in saying that you've been like featured Apple apps in like 35 different countries and stuff like that. How did you make that possible? Because I guess for a lot of people that are building apps in different spaces, like that's the dream. Like, did they approach you? Did you somehow make that happen? Could you share a bit about what happened in that incident?
Yeah, so they approached us eventually. So for the longest time, I was trying to get attention of the App Store. I think they featured us for the first time maybe when we had about, say, 10,000 users and maybe about 30, 40 reviews. So the Apple App Store, I think, is a lot nicer than the Google Play Store in a sense that Google Play kind of only really features you and gives you like additional functionality once you have like a massive, like you can't even create like custom marketing events, I think, on Google Play unless you have like a ton of downloads. Whereas for Apple, a lot of those functionality is open to you. And if you look at what they feature, oftentimes it's like up and coming developers, not just developers that have 1 million downloads already. So I was connected to one of the founders of the Body Coach app, which is a massive fitness app. And he was like, "Oh, actually, I spoke with the team today. I'll just name drop your name." And he said he talked about my app with them when he had a meeting with them. But I never heard anything from anyone for 6 to 9 months, I think. And then one day I got a email because if Apple was going to feature you, they would send you an email to submit assets, and I got the email to submit the assets with them. So yeah, if you're building a consumer app, feel free to reach out to me, and I could see if I could try to name drop you as well. But because the team is so small at Apple and they're so busy, we have touch points. But when I finally went on a phone call with the lead for Apple editorial for App Store, she's like, "You can just keep emailing me, but I probably won't have time to reply, but you can just like email me." So I think they really look at what you submit through the App Store, the events that you do. And since then, they've made us App of the Day many, many times. Thankfully, I think the Apple team is very progressive, and we're very thankful for that. And recently for Pride Month, we were the main feature, so that brought us a lot of downloads as well, where they talk about how coming out inspired an app. And that was really nice. And I think that gave us, that coverage to give us a lot more leverage in our fundraising round as well. But I think definitely is quite doable to be featured by the App Store in some way. So it doesn't have to be after day. After day, there's only like 365 slots, I guess, a year. But they actually do feature regionally as well. So you might get after day in just one country. For example, today we were after day in India for some reason, just India, but not the UK or US or anywhere else. So I guess it's quite a black box what the programming look like. But I think I've seen for a trend they like something that appeals to, that could be quite generic and appeal to people, like, I don't know, like a receipt scanner, to something that serves this particular community, like LGBT communities like us, or specifically like women's health, for example. And then I think your branding, it needs to look quite decent for them to feature you. But I think once you get on the radar, it can be quite easy to build on that relationship. And we also do lots of in-app events. So you could submit a banner that talks about a new product release you have. And we also often, when we grow our product, is we also package through, we also write common affairs. So for example, when Meta announced hate speech policy changes, so on Meta Facebook platforms, earlier this year in January, they changed their guidelines such that you could call LGBT people mentally ill or use the most horrible terms, and it won't be regarded as hate speech anymore. So us and our therapist, we just wrote we wrote like 5 modules called Coping with Hate Speech, Building Distress Tolerance, Dealing with Social Media Trolls, and we released that as something on Apple. And then I think they really liked that, and they featured us there. And I also used that to write a press release. And we also got a lot of press coverage and downloads, and a lot of charities shared it as well, because it was quite a contemporary issue. So I think if you're able to then, it really depends on what your product is, but if you can time and build really quickly your product according to current affairs, that could also really help you, because it's also not just for press or publicity, but also something that our users really needed at that time. Because even now, I think abuse on social media is kind of like up a lot. People just really, really mean for no reason. Yeah.
again, moving quickly is helpful, isn't it, in the startup space? And that takes us really nicely, I think, into something that's going to be transferable across whatever people are building. I mean, obviously, you're building in the social space. You're helping lots and lots of people, but equally, you are running a business, and you're looking to build a profitable business. So part of that is talking about customer acquisition, it's talking about churn rates, it's talking about your pricing and your sort of pricing models, etc. So I think in terms of charging, am I right in saying you charge £8 a month or £55 a year, and that you have a free platform as well? So it's very much people can come in, they can register, they can use the app, but at some point you're looking to convert. So I guess I've got a couple of questions around that. Number one, in terms of the pricing, it'd be really interesting to understand a bit more about how you've landed at that price point, and then if there's anything you can share for that conversion from free into paid, I think that would just be super relevant for anyone building in any industry.
Yeah, so in the beginning, we were really afraid to charge. And then we went through this accelerator that really kind of pushed us to test different things, because even if you wanted to raise your price, you could raise it for a few weeks to see how it goes. I think a lot of founders are very afraid in the beginning to charge. So we really got over that. Initially, I can't remember how much we charged, but I think we charged £26 a year with a 30-day free trial, which was way too long. Because when you give people too long a free trial as well, they sometimes don't really remember to come back. Whereas if you give them 7 days free trial, which is what we do now for the annual plan, so we charge £8 a month or £55 a year, but only the annual one has a free trial. In the beginning, we thought everyone would just go for the annual and then cancel, but actually a lot of people were just quite happy paying £8 off the bat. They're like, I just want to pay £8 and not worry about having to cancel. But when you give a 7-day free trial as well, it really prompts people to come back every day and use the product, because I only have 7 days, it's quite limited. And so we are freemium, so we have a lot of free resources on the app as well, because we also quickly realized that with a lot of the goodwill from the partners that help us grow, it's quite hard to gate this. So it's, a charity is not very likely to share your coping with hate speech module if it's gated with £8. So actually a lot of these resources that we created for the community are actually free. So we have about 40 free programs on the app, and then about 120 if you're on the paid plan. And then we also have an opt-in, so we have a lot of AI features as well. So if you want to use AI features, that's an extra fee too. And that also works really well because a lot of people in the LGBT community are extremely vocal about AI and how they don't like AI. So we kind of mitigated that. We have no complaints since, because it's if you want to use AI, it's paid. So you kind of just opt in. If you're not happy with the AI, then just use the free product. But the aim is to get people to nurture them to hopefully finding enough value from the app and paying for it. We also quickly realized in terms of demographics, we started marketing more in the US because people seem to be more willing and able to pay in the US. And we also shifted our messaging. So when we first when we were first at LGBT, pitched up hugely on mental health, people in the UK were also really averse to why should I pay for something for mental health. So we kind of changed the messaging to be LGBT self-care. Not self-care. Oh, actually, that's less to do with with that. It seems more goal-oriented, and people were more happy to pay for that because it didn't seem like mental health care, if that makes sense. We did try to scale through NHS at some point, but we just quickly realized I think it's just going to be too long. And we also quickly realized as a daily product, it makes more sense to be helping people with self-care than trying to build, say, a 16-week program. So when we were building it further, we were at a crossroads of, should we do this fun thing that helps you with self-care and probably has some benefits and reducing anxiety and makes your life slightly more fulfilling? Or do we do this very strict 16-week session based on the most developed psychotherapy techniques? And we decided to go the other route because we also quickly realized from our research that with a 16-week fixed program, it only really works if the person has to come back, because it's really quite boring. And so if you have 16 weeks free therapy through NHS, you're likely to go. But if the NHS gave you 16 weeks of programs to do at home, 30 minutes a day or 1 hour a week, the attrition is really high because it just feels too much like work. And that's why we kind of went the other route of like fun self-care, super inspired by Duolingo now, which is what a lot of our programs are like bite-sized that you can do anywhere. And over time, you could pay. And lastly, we had a feel-good element in there as well. So we tell our paying customers, it is true, so your subscription pays for free resources for other people. So by subscribing to Voda Plus, which is what I call premium offering, you also enable our programs where we have free programs like coping with hate speech that anyone can use and enjoy. Yeah.
Amazing. I think the takeaway for me there was like, first of all, it was super interesting hearing you say like that first, like, should we charge, when you're building, and it sounds like, I think for a lot of founders, you build an app, people start using it, it's free, and you have to get over some sort of hurdle yourself to go, actually, this is valuable, people should pay and will pay, which was really interesting. But I think beyond that, there was a lot of takeaways there. You've talked about understanding the product offering, you've talked about getting the branding right, you've talked about pricing strategies in terms of understanding the trials. You've talked about converting people to annual. You expected one thing with the annual, but actually people are happy to pay monthly. You've talked about the region that you're targeting as well. So there's a lot to it, and it sounds like you've been very analytical in that approach and really thoughtful in your approach. But I think that there's lots to be done there, and I guess you can start in one particular area and fine tune and fine tune and fine tune. So it comes back, I guess, a bit to like just start doing some of this stuff. Yeah. The thing that I loved when we were talking was in preparing for this, you talked a little bit about the conversion rate. Oh, yeah. And I thought it was really impressive, actually. You have a very good conversion rate, and again, it's probably clear to everyone you think about this type of stuff. So it'd be great to learn a little bit more, if you don't mind, about your conversion rate, about your churn rate, and if you're starting to notice reasons why people don't convert, and what you're doing about it.
Yeah, so we're a freemium app, and our conversion from free to paid on a free to paid plan right now is about 4.7%, and Duolingo is about, I think, 4 to 5%. So for a free app, that's quite good because a lot of people, might not pay. We're not very aggressive on monetizing. We could probably increase that if we, say, run ads where you get a really shitty experience if you don't subscribe. But I don't know. I just think that's a lot further. We could push it with just joyful and fun design. So our conversion that we improved slowly over time was now at about 4.75-ish. And we did that by running lots of different A/B tests. We will have, in raising our previous round, that was the key metric we wanted to improve, because we wanted to show investors that we have built something despite being very early stage that people will pay for. So that was our North Star that we tested every week. Like, what would potentially improve conversion? Is it like the paywall? When does it come up? We set up an email sequence. It's all the little steps. And also perhaps explaining the benefits to people. One thing that really helped shift the conversion rate in the beginning was when we use AI to give people a glimpse of what they could do. So you come on the app, you enter your moods, what issues you're facing, and you write about a 2-3 line journal entry. And we use AI to build you a 10-day plan, with elegantly designed 10-day plan for Jaron, so he has a name on it. And it shows you 10 exercises you would do for the next 10 days if you subscribe. That was the first thing that really helped shift it because people felt like it was something for them. And that also caused an opt-in. But if they didn't want that 10-day plan, they could then use the free resources instead. And the thing about it being 10 days is actually you could sign up for a free trial and get your first 7 days free anyway. So a lot of people would try it out. And then if you wanted, though, the last 3 days, I think at that point you're quite committed, you can then pay £8 a month or £55 for a whole year. And then you can create as many, say, 10 or these 10-day plans you want to have. And they help you basically. There was a new feature that we realized with our users. It basically gives you one technique to do every day, but it only takes 5 to 6 minutes, and it's created by AI. So if you, for example, I'm struggling with dating. My girlfriend just broke up with me. So say I'm a lesbian woman in East London. It then takes that context and gives you like 10 different exercises to do. is it, building boundaries, finding community, shame. So every day a little bit. And we quickly realized to do 10 short exercises instead of one huge one because of people's attention spans. And people, when we speak to users, they're like, yeah, I really want to do this, but for our old programs that were 30 minutes long, they're like, I can't find the time to do a 30-minute program. Or if I pause and come back, I forgot where I left off. That's why we kind of make everything smaller and bite-sized. So that's a little bit about our conversion. So that was our North Star. We stopped optimizing for that now. Our North Star now is retention. To get us through to the seed round, we think we need like really, really amazing retention rates.
Yeah. Perfect. You've teed me up in that case, if you don't mind. Talking about retention, churn rate. Again, for people out there building in the space, has there been some learnings for you when you focus on retention? Are there particular reasons, do you think, that people, cancel? Or what are your tips, or what are you starting to look at when you think about retention?
Yeah, so retention, there's a few, we're still figuring it out. We're kind of put up with a build. So the main metric we tracked previously was churn. So churn means the number of customers you lose a month. So if your churn rate is 10%, our churn rate is currently 10%, it means you lose 10% of your customers a month. And we're trying to get that down to 5%. But a lot of these, we have built onto the app a way to get feedback as well. So if people are pissed off, they could tell us right away. So when you use most of the features on Voda, at the end, you'll be like, let us know how this made you feel. And then it'll be a very sad face, slightly sad face, neutral face, and happy face. And actually those are scores for us, so 1 to 4. So that comes straight to our Slack channel. So we can see in real time when people like or don't like something. And then they could also complain there. And that's actually been quite useful for reviews as well. So I'll share my tip here is when someone sends in 4 out of 4, 30 minutes later, they get a, hey, hi, I'm Jaron. Would you mind leaving us an App Store review? And if someone leaves a 1 out of 4 or 2 out of 4, but hi, I'm Jaron. I'm really sorry you didn't have a good time. Here's my calendar. Would you like to go on a call with me? Or you have a direct line to me. And that's actually quite helpful for also increasing the number of reviews. So people, and then also, I think once people complained, then they don't complain again on the App Store. So you're also less likely to get bad reviews because they've already complained to you and already emailed them and said you can call me or email me right away if you're not happy. So that's one of the ways we have looked into how we could improve retention, because we know then if someone's likely to leave because they're unhappy about something. Or why do you have a program for gay men and lesbian, but why isn't there a program for non-binary people? Or where's the program for asexual people? So increasingly we try to also have more content that suits the entire community.
Amazing. Man, I wish Riley was here tonight. Riley takes such good notes for us in the community, and you've listed out about 20 different tips, I think, at this point. So we'll have to watch it back on YouTube. I'm conscious of time, so maybe we've got like 10, 15 minutes left. I can see a lot of fans being waved in this room. It is warm. It is warm, and I'm hoping this isn't a HD camera and everyone can see me sweating up here. But so we'll give it 10 more minutes. The things I'm really keen to cover actually is around fundraising. I think you've done an amazing job in that space, and again, I think it's super relevant for people that are out there building. I'm keen to get a couple of killer tips at the end from you, just where we go. I guess just before we get into that, as mentioned, you've listed 20 different things that you've done that have all been makes so much sense and amazing ideas. But in terms of that, more for fun than anything else, what would you say has been your most successful product feature or UX pattern that's helped Voda? Is there one in particular? Because you've mentioned so many already, so it may be hard. It's all little things to try out. So we started introducing fun characters on the app recently, like cute characters. So Voda, and what we pitched to users recently that people really liked was Duolingo meets Tamagotchi, but queer. So we can start introducing cute characters you can collect on the app. And now we started introducing icons where we just released that, but I'm going to have a few weeks of data to see. But if you log in for 7 days, you get a new icon, and we have a new fox on the app.
My first business was called Artisan and Fox. That's why I have a fox tattoo. This is actually the logo of my first business, the Artisan business. And now there's a fox on Voda as well. And we ask users to name the fox for us. And we're also giving them the chance to suggest animals you could see on the app. Because we were quite inspired with was Duolingo with a very cute owl. And also one of the second most popular self-care app is Finch, which is cute animals as well. And we also quickly realized for a lot of, because we're 18 plus, a lot of adults are like, actually, we do like this. It's quite nostalgic, you know. Even though the apps become more cutesy than formal over time, people seem to relate to that more, perhaps because of like challenging political times. But so that's what I've been really excited about. And so far, it seems to be, well received. We're not quite sure yet on the impact of retention, but we're very positive about it.
Amazing. Amazing. I downloaded the app today actually, and I've seen the fox, and I just assumed it was part of your branding forever because instantly I really liked it. I thought it was cool, man. So amazing. Getting on to fundraising then. In terms of fundraising, you've now raised 925k, which is fantastic. It'd be amazing, I think, to just understand what that's looked like. I believe you've done, did first round, some angel investment.
Yeah.
You've just mentioned sort of slightly larger funding round recently.
Yeah.
It'd be good to understand what they look like and if there was any particular differences in how you approached those two rounds.
So my first investment round was closed last April. So we raised 275k from angel investors and also a small pre-seed VC based in Germany. And I would say for my first angel round, so in my previous company, even though we raised funding, I was the chief product officer, so I never fundraised. And it was really, it took me a long time to step into the role and have enough conviction to even believe in myself that investors would give us money. But I think it took maybe 9 months of pitching for Voda before we had our first term sheet and investment offer for the previous round. And what really helped as well was we also did a SPV, which is a special purpose vehicle, which means you can get smaller checks from 1K onwards. And that also really helped me in my previous round because I had then a lot of little angels that came on board with 1K, 5K, 10K. And that also meant a lot of my investors, I could get investors who are trans. I have investors who is asexual. We have a lot of women investors on board as well for our angel round. And even though that round took a long time because the first investment took so long, because I think of mistakes of myself in pitching and not building FOMO. And it also takes a long time for someone to actually be the first investor. I think the first, is quite cliche, but actually the first one is much harder. But once you get the first one, the first yes, things really start to slowly fall into place, I think, because it's very hard for someone to be the first conviction investor. So that was the angel round last year, 275k. And then most recently we closed 650, so that was our pre-seed round. This one came together much quicker, because I learned to build FOMO at this point. So a few things that I did was I lined up quite a bit of press, or I knew some press were going to come out, but I didn't really announce it until I was raising. So we had a Metro article about my coming out story and how we're helping queer people cope with shame. I didn't really announce that until months after. So when I was officially fundraising, I could then share that. There's another way to get press is to pitch up ads. So if you give art publications free words, they will take it. So there's a lot you could write about. I wrote for HR Magazine about how to help your employees come out safely. I've wrote for Madiness, which is a tech company, a publication. I'm going to write for Sifted very soon. So if you pitch these publications free words and you're not selling your business, but instead try to provide some insight about whatever you're doing, that helps as well. And this round came together quickly as well because I had a lot of investors from my last round who then soft committed something for this round. So when I launched this round, I was already 40% committed. So I announced the round that we're raising in January, and we got most of the commitments by March, April, and we only just announced the press in June. But I guess the trick to that was to publicly fundraise once you have some on board. So because technically I was already starting to fundraise October last year, I was really warming up some of my angels from my previous round, telling them I was going to raise. And thankfully, I also had investors that were able to follow on. So they said, if you you can get this amount, then I will come in. And that's why it kind of went much faster this time around with the raise. I'm not sure if people here are first-time founders, or there are other ways to kind of get it started. You know, if you get into an accelerator, for example, that could be a first check. There's a lot of first check accelerators, using that and bundling that together with your raise. So then, you know, you start something with 40% on. But yeah, very happy to check fundraising strategies. Any of you are looking to fundraise soon, very happy to chat. I could point in the right direction based on whether you're raising from impact investors, or if you're raising like formal VC or angel. I think the UK is great because of the SEIS scheme where you can raise up to 250K. Yeah, I hope that covers some ground.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I love the concept of warming up the room. I think it makes lots of sense, and I think you've lived that from the first to the second round. I guess just the quick question I have: I feel like it feels like you're very natural in terms of gaining press and warming up the room and getting content out there and stuff like that. And I know there's obviously whole industries out there that specialise in getting your story and that, but you've done all of this yourself. In terms of getting articles in the Metro and stuff like that, how easy was that? You know, and it makes so much sense again. But I think perhaps founders are out there thinking, well, I don't know how to get coverage. I don't know how to do this, and you found that really helped. So how do you approach that particular part of fundraising?
Yeah, so actually, I had help for both op-eds and press. I can refer you to them, but they give me heavily discount rates, so I can't say how much I really paid them. But I worked with someone for op-eds for 3 months, and she really helped me with understanding the process. So she would help write emails with me, pitches with me, and she would speak to people to get an op-ed. So, I would just go on phone calls, and then I'll be like, okay, here are some publications you could pitch to, here are some topics, and then she would just reach out to them. And point was basically, you know, one op-ed a month where I'll write it and she would edit it 800 words. But after I graduated, she was very happy for me to just do it myself. So now I do a lot of op-eds myself. But actually, I just started working with her again today because I realized I didn't really have time to reach out to publications. So we're restarting the process now where she will secure me op-eds and I'll write it and she'll send it out. Maybe proofread it and send it out. Work with Emily for 6 months. And then after that, I thought, okay, I want to try to get press a different way, not just submit op-eds where someone takes my words. So I know this person. He helped me with basically speaking to people at Metro and all this different. He'll build a profile and then pitch, and so that's how we got some of those profiles as well. But we're kind of shifting, and then once I've learned that process, I now then did my own most recent funding round. Press release myself, and we got quite a lot of bites because once you know how to send the email, because with press, for example, press releases, you should always attach the press release in the email itself instead of a document or like a link somewhere else. Like they get so many pictures a day, they just want to see the whole thing in the email too. So there's like ways to write all these emails that like increases your chance of a reply. And also the strategy of just constantly reaching out to press, because I think some press that covered our press release this time maybe have had 4 or 5 emails from me before, but they've never replied or acknowledged it. But then they finally cover it eventually. So journalists are extremely busy, so they might remember you. So I think the whole point is like continue to reach out even if they've not got back to you the first time around. But if you're doing a press release, very happy to chat you through how I did it as well. But for us, you know, we weren't targeting TechCrunch or whatever. A lot of the more relevant ones to us were LGBT media, and a lot of them picked it up. And that's what we wanted because we want people from the community to download the app.
Amazing. So much of running a business is either just being told no or people ignoring you. But keep going. So we've got this. I think in terms of that, I'd love to perhaps just touch one more point on the fundraising, and then we'll just finish with a few tips from there. Again, I always feel a bit funny positioning question around mistakes or things that you would do differently. But I think nearly anyone that I've spoke to about fundraising say, I wish I'd known this at the beginning. That was a definite mistake. Were there any things that you look back on now that you were like, okay, that was quite a big mistake. I wouldn't do that if I was doing it again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my number one advice for fundraising founders is conviction. So actually doing a lot of the inner work, almost like self-therapy on your business before you do your pitch. So what that means is I've met other founders where they've been pitching the businesses for months and they've gotten a lot of no's. And they're still pitching it, but you could tell they don't really believe it in the business anymore. It's okay because everyone gets those periods, but if you're in that state, it's very important to actually take that time out and being like, what's actually like holding me back? What has this 20 no's from investors made me doubt about the business now? Because if you say if we're gonna be $100 million company in the next 5-7 years, but if you don't actually believe it, people could really tell where you lack the conviction. And so then it's for you to like, what are the gaps? Is it like, what am I actually afraid of not working out? Do I actually think the market isn't big enough? Do I think I actually couldn't build it with the right team? Or do I think, I don't know, you just need to find out what that self-doubt is, because I think what my real estate investors is they can really suss it out. And secondly, then it's how agreeable you are as well. So you don't always have to be super agreeable. You just need to have a good response. So I think I came on with it out of investors meetings much better when they said something like, oh, actually, I don't think that's true and this is why. Rather than, oh yeah, let me look into that. Or because a lot of investors, especially when it comes to like business model, they're like, oh, why don't you sell through the NHS? I wouldn't just say, yeah, sure, let me sell through the NHS. I'd be like, well, we tried and it wouldn't really work. Particularly for us, because there is no particularly funding pot for the intersection between mental health services and being LGBT. But actually there are funding pots with the intersection between say, sexual health and LGBT. Like there's like a PrEP service that's like an anti-HIV drug service. There's also a sexual health service that's targeted for LGBT people, but there isn't one for mental health. So even though we spoke with lots of people in the NHS services, we quickly realized that even though there were a lot of people trying to push us forward to try to get some funding or reimbursements, there was no formal route. And there was just like too many barriers to try to grow through the NHS. That's why we decided to go consumer. But yeah, so I think have a lot of conviction in yourself because that comes across really well. Even if you don't have all the answers yet, you can just say, I don't have answers yet, but you need to really emphasize the self-belief when even if you're slightly delusional. Because if you go in like, oh yeah, maybe we'll raise, maybe we won't, I think that investors would not place their bets on you.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much. I guess final two questions in that case. I think one thing I'd love to do is perhaps get a little bit of your vision for the next 5 years with Voda. Whenever we're talking with any of the founders, I always think to myself it would be amazing to get them come back and obviously see where they are 5 years from now. So I'd love to see the vision for Voda. And then I think the final thing is like you're obviously building something within an underserved space, and I think we're really lucky to have you up here sharing with us in that particular area. And I think if people are watching this at home, I'd love to hear if you have any tips for people that are building in that underserved space that would perhaps help them on their journey. So we'll start with where's Voda going to be in 5 years, and then we'll finish with a tip, and we'll go have a gin and tonic or a 0% beer.
Cool. So we want to reach 7 million people globally in the next 5 years, and eventually tens of millions of people around the world. Particularly in areas where it's really hard to reach. It's still illegal to be who I am in 65 countries. That number went up recently in the last year, even though it was declining in the last few years. But it went up for the first time, I think this year or last year, in the number of countries that recriminalized homosexuality went up. So we really want to be that discreet level of support for people that could access it globally. We were recently banned in Russia. Russia sent us a very it was like a few weeks ago. we got from the Russian information office or something. It was a happy Pride Month for Putin. No, it didn't say that, but it said you're banned from, you cannot. It said you can't. They wrote to the App Store and the Google Play Store and asking them to remove us. Obviously, the App Store didn't remove us, but I think we're now banned from being accessed in Russia. And we did have a few hundred, I think, users that were accessing us from there. But I'd love to be that discrete level of support for people in those countries because for our solution, for example, I think it works better than talking therapy or Zoom therapy because a lot of people live in areas where they can't even go on Zoom calls. So for me, back in Singapore, I would have been living with my parents. So then I can't do Zoom therapy at home because they might overhear me. And so an app is a really helpful way of accessing mental health support and just to feel validated for the first time. And so that's really my wish for Voda, to support people globally. And then hopefully in the future, when we're like a massive company, then invest funding into charities as well and activists who are trying to, make it such that who we are is not illegal. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic goals, man.
Thanks.
Fantastic.
But also, make my investors a lot of money. I think we shouldn't say that. Yes, and do good as well. Yeah. But most of my investors actually are impact investors, so they see both as very important.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And just to finish, we're after that one tip. If you're fresh out there, you're thinking about building, in an underserved space particularly, have you got any tips? What would you say to people out there just starting the journey?
I think underserved spaces are, especially with impact spaces, are like the best to build in. I have really great investors on board. I have really great advisors. I have so many people that open doors for us because they genuinely believe in what we do. And we're very lucky to work with really great team members. My co-founder, Chris, is a PhD in AI. His previous company sold for 40 million, and he wants to work with me. And also just a lot of collaborators will open doors for you. But if you're not building, an impact company, I think it's finding a problem that you're really interested in solving and you have lots of fun doing. Because to build a company, it really needs to be fun as well. I think over the last year, I was starting to get back into my dysfunctional relationship with work, where everything was just about getting something done. And then my co-founder was like, Jaron, you need to have fun with this. It is possible to have fun. Even if you're pitching investors and fundraising. I've done many pitch days or many investors calls where it just went kind of bad. But I kind of just imagine myself getting experience points. I'm like, I did there's this 10 EXP for this failed pitch. And yeah, just gamify it perhaps. Yeah. And just to, it's very, to build something you care about, that is also a privilege. And I feel very lucky every day I get to build Voda and also be here to speak with you all and share our story.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Mate, thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. I think my experience points are off the chart at the minute in terms of that is the way I'm going to look at it from now on. When things aren't going right, it's experience points. But man, what a journey. Absolutely thank you so much for coming and sharing. You've already achieved so much. Big shout out to Chris as well. If Chris ever ends up watching this back, I've been aware of Chris in the data space for a long time. Amazing person as well. But yeah, so many takeaways, and I would love a round of applause for Jaron, please.